Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs. The girlfriend of the current director of the FBI, Kash Patel, is suing a former FBI agent, United States Air Force veteran, whistleblower turned podcaster for defamation for $5 million for suggesting that she's part of a Mossad honeypot to infiltrate the government.
These are the days of our lives.
Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives.
Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. And if you haven't heard this story, it's a doozy. The girlfriend of Kash Patel, the current director of the FBI, her name is Alexis Wilkins, is suing one former FBI agent, Kyle Seraphin, for defamation because Kyle suggested or overtly stated that she is a honeypot working with Mossad to infiltrate the U.S. government.
Yes, I said it.
Now, full disclosure, and I'm not saying this to cover my tushy or because I'm working with Mossad, I do not believe this story for one flipping second. I think it's a stretch beyond all stretches. Whether or not it rises to the level of defamation for a $5 million lawsuit, I do not think it rises to the level of defamation because I think everybody understands that this is a theory and a very tenuous theory at that. But if you don't know who the players are in the story, let me introduce you to the players. Enter the scene, Kyle Seraphin from Wikispooks.com. Kyle Seraphin is a former FBI special agent, federal whistleblower, and veteran of the USAF. He investigated the Jan 6 pipe bombs. Player 2 from IMBD, Alexis Wilkins. I just need to point out one thing. She's 5 feet tall. Yes, we have finally found one person on the interwebs that I am actually taller than. I'm 5'6" on a good day. From IMBD.com, the biography, Alexis Wilkins speaks the truth and owns who she is with her unapologetic storytelling, cowboy-like leaning, and definitive pull from the past. She honors country tradition while adding relevance and current commentary, Arkansas-bred and Nashville-based singer-songwriter and commanding artist. Wilkins struck platinum with her debut single release, garnering over 1 million streams across key platforms. With this came accolades and endorsements from American Songwriter, Today in Nashville, Sounds Like Nashville, and more. Well, it seems that, according to Kyle Seraphin, Alexis Wilkins is an either witting or unwitting agent of Mossad, working for or on behalf of Mossad to infiltrate the U.S. government via Kash Patel, and he said as much and is now being sued for defamation. From the Times of Israel, FBI chief's girlfriend sues podcaster for claiming she's an Israeli, quote, honeypot, end quote, agent. Alexis Wilkins, long-term partner of Kash Patel, is suing Kyle Seraphin for $5 million in damages over claims she is working on behalf of Mossad to manipulate the FBI director. From the body of the article, The Times of Israel, Alexis Wilkins, the girlfriend of FBI Director Kash Patel, filed a defamation lawsuit this week against podcaster Kyle Seraphin over his claims that Wilkins is an Israeli intelligence agent. The lawsuit was first reported by the Reason Legal News site, which published copies of the suit on Thursday. Seraphin, himself a former FBI agent, claimed to his listeners that Wilkins, a 26-year-old country singer, is operating a so-called honeypot scheme on behalf of Mossad to manipulate Patel in favor of Israel. According to the lawsuit, Seraphin, quote, has maliciously lied, end quote, about Wilkins and is, quote, using this fabricated story as self-enriching clickbait, end quote. Before we get into the actual impugned statement, just to very briefly go over defamation, the statement needs to be false. It needs to have compromised the reputation of the individual. And if you're dealing with celebrities or public figure interest people who are public figures, it needs to be made with actual malice. But let's just get into the allegedly defamatory statement, and I'll ask all of you whether or not you think this rises to the level of defamation. From the lawsuit, which is filed in the United States District Court for the Western District of Texas, Austin Division, Alexis Wilkins, plaintiff, versus Kyle M. Seraphin, defendant. Complaint. Defendant Kyle M. Seraphin has maliciously lied about Alexis Wilkins, falsely asserting that she, an American-born country singer, is an agent of a foreign government assigned to manipulate and compromise the director of the FBI. Defendant, a former FBI special agent himself, who now makes a living as a podcaster and political commentator, profiting off controversy and outrage, is using this fabricated story as self-enriching clickbait and has spread it to his sizable audience that follows his daily broadcast on X, Rumble, and YouTube. Accordingly, Ms. Wilkins seeks to hold defendant accountable for his malicious and knowing lies. And the impugned section at paragraph 10 of the lawsuit on August 22nd, 2025, defendant stated the following on the Kyle Seraphin show. FBI Director Kash Patel has had his own little honeypot issue that's been going on of late, so we're just going to acknowledge it real publicly. He's got a girlfriend that is half his age, who apparently is both a country music singer, a political commentator on Rumble, a friend of of John Rich through Bongino, who also now owns a big chunk of Rumble. And she's also a former Mossad agent in what is like the equivalent of their NSA. But I'm sure that's totally because, like, she's really looking for a cross-eyed, you know, kind of thickish built, super cool bro who's almost 50 years old, who's Indian in America. Like, it has nothing to do with the fact that, we're really close to the Trump administration. Anyway, I'm sure that's totally just like love. That's what real love looks like. Emphasis added. Now, it is always necessary to go find the original source, the original statement in its broader context, which I did, and which I'm going to play for you right now with a few seconds before and a few seconds afterwards. And you tell me if you think this is defamation or just one person's clearly unhinged opinion, because I say this, Kyle Seraphin and I have had our run-ins on Twitter. I don't know him personally. I know that he's gone after James O'Keefe, and I didn't think it was fair, and I didn't like it. He's gone after Julie Kelly, and I didn't think it was fair, and I didn't like it. But that does not mean that I'm going to jump on a bandwagon of defamation when I don't think he is guilty of defamation, when I think he is clearly entitled to what is clearly his own opinion, an unsubstantiated, and I would even dare say an unrefutable, clearly opinion, and anybody listening to Kyle Seraphin knows that they're listening to his opinion. Let's play the video in its broader context.
Right, but she totally wasn't a honeypot. Like, she's an undercover operative, like doing totally legit things. The fact is, this woman was apparently at a fairly high level in the CI program. She was either an assistant section chief or a section chief, which is a truly problematic thing. And Kash Patel takes umbrage with the word honeypot, not anything else. He's had his own little honeypot issue that's been going on of late, so we're just going to acknowledge it real publicly. He's got a girlfriend that's half his age, who apparently is both a country music singer, a political commentator on Rumble, a friend now of John Rich through Bongino, who also owns a big chunk of Rumble, and she's also a former Mossad agent in what is like the equivalent of their NSA. But I'm sure that's totally because, like, she's really looking for like a cross-eyed, you know, kind of thickish built, super cool bro who's almost 50 years old, who's Indian in America. Like, it has nothing to do with the fact that we're really close to the Trump administration. Anyway, I'm sure that that's totally just like love. That's what real love looks like. That's why Kash Patel's in his 40s and lives with a man in Las Vegas full time. Totally regular, no big deal. I'm just saying it's interesting that he decided to go and take umbrage with this, and I'm going to tell you why I think it's so wild, Steve, because it actually goes to the thing that was stated earlier, and it ties into the Epstein situation. The New York field office and the New York mafia, which I will have you explain in your terms in a second, because I'm sure you've experienced it differently. The New York mafia in the FBI got Kash Patel's ear almost immediately, supplanted our recommendation for a good deputy director, to his detriment, I think, and then started whispering sweet nothings like, that chick is not a honeypot, you need to do these things, and managed to basically discredit him by punching out a bunch of fake information that made Bondi look terrible, and I think actually is going to bring down the deputy director time of Dan Bongino. I think that the Epstein rollout discredited him basically in a way that he's no longer able to recover. That's my take on it. And it's all from the same crew of people that we heard are all gone yesterday from Patel on Fox News.
Now, for those of you who are trying to make sense of what is clearly Kyle Seraphin's unsubstantiated opinion, you have to understand what's going on here. Alexis Wilkins is not even Jewish. The lawsuit clarifies as much. Paragraph 14, a defendant cannot even claim ignorance or negligence because he has personally met Ms. Wilkins with Mr. Patel at a conservative political event roughly 2 years ago and was specifically aware from that encounter that Ms. Wilkins was in a relationship with Mr. Patel, who was not the FBI director at the time. Ms. Wilkins is not even Jewish, much less Israeli, and has never set foot in Israel. She is not now and has never been an agent for any intelligence agency. The notion that her relationship with Director Patel is part of some plot against her country is vile and ridiculous, and defendant knows this. It is, in my humble view, a wild and ridiculous position to hold. It's a wild and ridiculous opinion to hold, but that being said, opinions cannot qualify as defamation. Now, there is that whole caveat to this. You can't say, in my opinion, someone is a convicted pedophile, because that is a statement of fact cloaked as an opinion. But here, when you say that someone is an agent of Mossad,
What the heck does that even mean?
one of the most rampant internet tropes is that X, Y, and Z works for Mossad. Hell, I have been accused of working with Mossad myself. Am I going to go sue everybody for defamation who says that? No, because it's just a stupid, idiotic, unsubstantiated opinion. And the other thing is, it's not just Kyle Seraphin himself who is saying this. My goodness, when you get to a certain level of public notoriety, everybody on earth gets accused of being a Mossad agent. Now, that's not to say that some people aren't, in fact, agents of Mossad. you know, like Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, arguably. But Alexis Wilkins, unless the argument is that she is an agent of Israel by virtue of the fact that she worked with PragerU, which is a very pro-Israel organization, unapologetically so, and Marissa Streit once had a stint in the IDF. If that's the best of the argument, it's a pretty damn weak argument. And by the way, that is the best of the argument. From Salty Girl on Twitter, at SaltyGirl09. Well, now it's starting to make sense. Kash Patel's girlfriend is a Jewish, quote, country singer, end quote, and works for PragerU, run by Dennis Prager, whose CEO is a known former Mossad operative. Epstein Island was a blackmail operation for Mossad. If you release the client list, you can no longer blackmail the client list. It's all one big old club. America is occupied. And from Simon Godek, at Godekatal, exactly. Alexis Wilkins is 20 years younger than Kash and works for an NGO that's basically Israeli intelligence. And seriously, why would an attractive young woman date a not-so-attractive Indian-American classic honeypot? Some of you out there are going to scream racism. Why are they focusing on Kash Patel's Indian heritage as though that's something of an unattractive feature of the individual? The age difference is actually 19 years of age, and Alexis Wilkins is in her mid-20s. When you get to a certain age, the age difference becomes mildly irrelevant. My best friend's parents of childhood were 20 years apart. And whether or not I think it is somewhat judgmental to suggest that a young, attractive white woman would not be attracted to a man with power who happens to be Kash Patel because he's Indian, it's bizarre. It's stupid. It's a stupid, unsubstantiated, and unsubstantiatable opinion. But it's an opinion nonetheless that people are entitled to have and entitled to profess publicly, everyone knowing that it's an opinion. Kyle Seraphin is of the opinion that Alexis Wilkins is an agent of Mossad because she works with PragerU, and Marissa Streit apparently worked with Mossad or something along those lines. So she could be an agent, but an unwitting agent, an agent in a very technical sense where she has worked with an organization that worked with. All right, you have an opinion. I happen to think it's a wildly ludicrous, or at the very least tenuous opinion, because if you want to do this degree of separation, you will not be able to find someone who doesn't have 1, 2, or 3 degrees of separation from an Israeli organization. So everyone is an unwitting agent of Mossad, and I know there's a lot of people out there who might actually believe that, but bottom line, it's a tenuous, unsubstantiated opinion. But I think everybody reading that, everybody listening to Kyle Seraphin knows that it is his opinion and his opinion alone. Well, I'm sure that other people share that opinion, but everybody understands it's an opinion, not a statement of fact, and certainly not a defamatory statement of fact, lest everyone who's ever been accused of being an agent of Mossad has a claim for defamation against the people saying it. Freedom of speech, freedom of thought, I don't think this violates any laws, but that is just my own opinion. And by the way, if you're still watching this and you haven't hit that like, share, subscribe button, what do I need to do to get you to do it? Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention also that Texas has robust anti-slap statutes, so I have no doubt Kyle Seraphin is going to seek to have this lawsuit dismissed based on those very robust anti-slap statutes. That is my opinion. I don't think this lawsuit gets very far, but I don't think this lawsuit was filed for the purposes of winning. This lawsuit was filed for the purposes of fighting in the court of public opinion. Alexis has fought in the court of public opinion. I think the very fact that people now understand she's not even Jewish, you might want to attenuate your conspiracy theories as to her being a Mossad agent honeypot intended to infiltrate the American government via Kash Patel, even though she started dating him before he was even director of the FBI. You might want to second guess that opinion. But that being said, if you like what I do, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, exercise, eat healthy, talk to people in real life. And now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Mr. Swalwell is down there. Obviously, everybody knows he's made some comments. He's got a checkered past. He's alleged relationships.
A checkered past? I would ask...
it's my time.
Mr.
Alleged affairs, relationships with
No,
Yum Yum.
sir. You don't get to say that shit. That's not
He had
true.
alleged relationships with Yum Yum.
I asked the gentleman's words to be taken down.
You don't get to say
Mr.
that,
Chairman,
pal.
Yes, the
we ask that
gentleman's
the
words be taken down as casting a slur on another member.